And we're Producers Livestock in San Angelo, Texas today. This is the largest sheep and goat auction in the nation due to its location in kind of the heart of the sheep and goat industry of Texas, the state with the highest population of sheep and goats. All right, so we're here today with Benny Cox with Producers Livestock. You want to share a little bit about what Producers does and serves the industry with?
Well, Producers is actually the largest sheep and goat auction in the nation. Years ago, it became the largest sheep auction, and that's the way we phrased it. We have to say the largest sheep and goat auction now because about half of our receipts have been goats up until starting back about 1995 and up until now. However, we see a big increase in the hair sheep numbers, which have taken place of our wool sheep in many instances, and actually some of our goat numbers.
So when do we see that big change start to occur?
The big change in these hair sheep started back probably 20 years ago, but definitely in the last 10 to 15 years have increased tremendously. And a lot of that due to labor issues. If you'll remember, we had a wool incentive started in 1954 and lasted up into the mid-90s. Actually, the last payments were in 1995. And people started to change their methods of operations when that wool and mohair incentive went away. We're open 24/7. There's somebody here to receive livestock anytime. We now sell sheep on Tuesdays and cattle on Thursdays. We do have some additional special sales for a year on Mondays where we sell just calves and yearlings only. We have some production sales through the year.
All right, so tell us a little bit about the history of Producers.
Well, Producers actually was built back in the late 40s, and it traded hands a number of times until 1954 when the Cargill family bought it. Cargill family still owns it, actually. At that time, there was another auction here in San Angelo, Texas, and it wasn't long before that auction shut down. And I wasn't quite old enough to remember that part. Like I say, I came here in the late 60s. But anyway, the Cargill family bought this thing, and it soon became the largest sheep and goat auction in the nation. People were ready for a system like this. Back in the 40s and 50s, back into the 30s even, most of your bigger groups of livestock in this particular area were put on rail and shipped to the Fort Worth stockyards. Fort Worth stockyards was a big center where they had lots of commission companies. You would consign your livestock to a commission company. In 1931, they could house 20,000 sheep and goats, 30,000 cattle, 30,000 hogs, and 5,000 horses and mules. I can't imagine seeing 5,000 horses and mules in one pile, but anyway, and in 1931, they sold over 1 million sheep at the Fort Worth stockyards.
Auction markets, and this one does cattle as well as sheep and goats. Today is sheep and goat day. So regional auction markets just basically perform a service for the industry. It's a centralized point where people can bring their respective livestock. There's buyers that come here on this day, and it just gives a place for people to get together and buy and sell. If you'll notice, there is all kinds of variation out here among the types of sheep and goats we have, which is really representative of what's out there in the country. You know, we can see all that come in here on a Tuesday. We have hair sheep and meat sheep, and we have meat goats. I think that I saw a pen of dairy goats earlier. You know, some people, that's kind of a niche market as well, but everything, there's Angora goats here as well. We saw some of them in back of us. So the whole industry is really represented here in these pens today, and the buyers in the ring in there will have their specific markets that they're buying for. Some of them will be buying traditional wool sheep. Some of them may be even buying young breeding sheep to go back out to the ranches where, you know, to use them for replacement animals. But a lot of these are destined for the market. So.
Bruce was also mentioning the different types of animals, but also the different age classes.
Right.
You can bring in your age culls, animals that are towards the end of their life, and if you left them out on the range another year, it's likely that they'd succumb to the elements and might die out there on the range. And so instead of going through that process, you can bring them here. There's buyers that'll take them to a market and be sold as mutton or aged goat. So this is a great asset to the sheep and goat industry. especially for the smaller producer that can't attract the large buyers because they don't have the volume, they can bring in a small group of animals and get a good, fair price because all of the buyers that are here in that competitive auction place.
Correct.
So USDA has a market reporter that comes to this sale every Tuesday and identifies the class of animal, reports those sales, and that is published online and is open and available to everybody. So a lot of the market reports that are in weekly magazines or online, those markets are set because of these public auctions.
Yeah, that's a great
they set
point.
that price so that everyone knows what's fair, what's out there. And so a lot of animals are sold in the country, not at these auctions, but these auctions set that market baseline, if you will.
So for example, if a large rancher was out with an order buyer on his ranch and he was going to sell 2 or 3 loads of, large truckloads of sheep, this auction here would kind of help set that negotiating place they start from anyway.
Right. And sometimes larger operations, because of that volume, they can sell a big portion of their animals off the ranch, but that buyer may have a weight class. Say they're buying lambs and they want 60 to 90 pound lambs. Well, inevitably, you're going to have some that are lighter than 60 and some that are heavier than 90, but you're not going to have them in a volume enough to put on a truck. So often that buyer may load and fill a truck at the ranch, but what's left over that doesn't fit the weight class of that buyer will end up at an auction place such as this, and so provides great value to the industry. So Bruce, what are the things that these livestock auctions do to protect the animal health as they come in? What do we do to make sure that we're creating the least amount of stress as possible?
Well, obviously they're selling on weight, as we saw in there. So the first thing that we think about is, if we have stressed animals or they're excited, they're going to lose weight or not be quite as happy. So you will notice that just by looking at their body language, they're pretty calm. They're not stirred up. They're not running into the fences or anything. So they've obviously been handled correctly since they got here. Most of these animals will spend at the most maybe 2 nights here. They usually come into this auction the day before the sale. They're unloaded. They're given clean water and feed. If you'll notice, those water troughs over there probably get cleaned every day before the sale starts, before the new crop of animals come in. That water.
You notice it got a clean out valve right there.
Yeah, got a clean out valve on the bottom, and they're good clean water, and so these animals are pretty happy.
Feed as well. In all of these pens, you see that these animals have access to a high quality feed. It looks like to be a kind of a texture feed that has a little bit of grain, some cottonseed hulls, maybe some alfalfa pellets.
Coming off of pasture, they're used to having a high roughage diet. So this may look like, it's not roughage, but a lot of that hay is ground up in there, and it provides the same. It's just an ease of delivery is the reason we grind it rather than throwing hay out here in these pens. That also helps them keep them clean, is if we can put feed in troughs rather than piling a bunch of hay out here in the pens and having that. So it's ease of delivery, but that's just the receiving ration there that's got quite a bit of roughage in it.
And if we did, some auctions may look at using a hay as a forage resource, but we would have a high amount of waste. With hay and new animals coming in, they're going to really pick at that. But these feed troughs and these feed delivery systems that they have here are also very easy to clean. We see some of these goats will jump in this, and so they'll get in them, but these will be cleaned out. They look like they're all at an angle. It's easy for someone to get in, clean that out. New feed's going to be put out before the next sale.
At home, we do recommend that people keep their feed troughs covered so that goats love to climb. But like you said, here it's not an issue because it gives them ease of access, and these goats will be out of here today, and these troughs will be cleaned out.
Looks like they're Rambouillet ram lambs. This is what the sale used to be dominated with, would be Rambouillets. Those are, the only thing that's different with those is today is those all look like intact. Those were not castrated.
Just turn on the way up.
So one thing unique about this sale is they're sold before they're weighed. You see that 9 head weighed 88 pounds, sold. Total weight was $7.95, and the price for those ram lambs was $1.98 a pound or $1.98 a hundredweight. 7 head that came in behind them that was the same, looked like the same group of lambs, a lighter weight, at 71 pounds. Total weight was 500. They brought 220 per hundredweight or 220 a pound. And then the last group, they broke that group into 3. The last group was 5 head. Average weight was 63. Total weight was 315, and those also brought 220 a pound. And that's what you'll typically see is those lighter weights will bring a little bit more money. Those being intact ram lambs are most likely going towards a non-traditional market. Most of our feeders would discount those ram lambs because they'd be fed for another 120 days, and the buckiness of them would slow their growth and they'd stay leaner. The non-traditional market being a market that's going to harvest those lambs at that weight, typically going towards migrant population, whether that's the people that have migrated from the Middle East, Africa, Southeast Asia, cultures that eat lamb more often in their common diet than the conventional American. One of the reasons that these lambs and goats are sold after they're weighed after they sold, as you notice, they sorted off one of them. The buyers have certain animals that they're looking for, and so if they have a group that comes in from a small producer that only brings 3 in, the buyers can then request that one animal will be sorted off so that they can bid on that animal and then bid on the other 2, whether that's size, weight, condition, sex, breed, all things that influence what those buyers are looking for. Here's some kid meat goats that looks to be a Boer Spanish cross. These are in high demand right now. They're going on the scale. We'll get a weight and their end price coming up. There was 6 head of those meat goat kids. They weighed 47 pounds. Total weight's 280. They brought 270 pounds. What are these tags that are on the animals out here?
That's gonna identify the lot number for the buyers and the seller. The sellers will call out the lot number, and that buyer in there will have a list of animals for sale that day, and he can reference these in by the lot that they're in. We mentioned that this is a collecting point for buyers and sellers, and there are going to be some of these sheep that the ethnic markets tend to be in the very large cities, generally speaking. So a lot of these animals are going to be headed straight for the meat consumption on the East Coast and maybe the West Coast, but New York, Philadelphia, all up and down the East Coast is where a lot of these ethnic markets are. So they'll be bought here and assembled, maybe even with animals from other auction markets around the country, and they'll move that direction.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. That larger populations of these metropolitan areas are going to be where the larger market outlets are for many of the non-traditional trades. But for more of the traditional trades, like the fine wool lambs that are below us, they're most likely destined for
they may stay right here,
a feeding facility.
They stay right here in Tom Green County. There's a lamb feeding facility here.
Mm-hmm.
There's some others up, towards Lubbock and up in that area. So there are some regional lamb feeding facilities here that service that traditional market.
And then the largest concentration would be in northern Colorado.
Correct.
That's proximity for the harvest plants, the processing facilities.
So. The processing facility is in Greeley, and so they do feed a lot of lambs up in that high plains of Colorado.
Yeah, Greeley and Denver.
Yeah.